Number 9. Rashia Wilson. Starting in 2009, a Tampa woman named Rashia Wilson and several co-conspirators filed tens of thousands of fraudulent tax returns and collected at least $3.1 million in refunds over a period of 3 years. They filed the fake returns using other people's information without their knowledge or consent, cheating the victims out of any money that might have been owed to them. Wilson spent the ill-gotten funds in very noticeable ways. She bought a $90,000 Audi, spent around $30,000 on her child's first birthday party, and used the money to party and buy luxury items. The mother of 3 also bragged about the stolen money on social media by posting a photo of herself holding huge stacks of cash, along with a caption that read, "I'm Rashia, the queen of IRS tax fraud." She went on to say that it would be difficult for anyone who tries to indict her because she's now a millionaire. However, she overestimated her ability to openly taunt the federal government over the stolen money without suffering consequences for it. Naturally, the case fell under investigation, and in 2012, Wilson and her boyfriend, Morris Larry, were arrested for their crimes. They both took plea deals resulting in a 14.5-year sentence for Larry and a 21-year sentence for Wilson. Rashia won a resentencing hearing and walked away with the same punishment she received the first time. At the moment, she's scheduled to be released in 2031. While addressing the court, she acknowledged that she made a mistake, but said that she thinks she deserves a second chance. Wilson further stated in a Tampa Bay Times interview that she grew up in abject poverty and was just a regular person trying to survive. She has some supporters who believe that her 21-year sentence is too harsh. But for the most part, the general public has been less than forgiving toward Rashia, especially since her crimes weren't victimless and involved stealing people's identities. Number 8. Brianna Bru. In 2017, a student that attended the University of Hartford in Connecticut tortured her roommate until she moved out of the dorm they shared together. 18-year-old Brianna Bru was enraged when her college roommate, Chanel Rowe, allegedly posted videos of her sleeping on social media and made fun of her for snoring. In a Facebook post, Bru described a number of disgusting things she did to Rowe's property, including spitting in her coconut oil, filling her facial cleanser with moldy clam dip, rubbing used tampons on her backpack, putting her roomie's toothbrush places where the sun don't shine, and so much more. Bru claimed that she did these things for a month and a half until Rowe finally moved out of the dorm. She wrote in the post that she was celebrating the Jamaican Barbie's departure from their shared space, raising concerns that Bru's harassment was at least partially motivated by racism. After finding out about the post, Rowe mentioned in a Facebook Live video that she was suffering from a sore throat caused by a bacterial infection. It left her wondering if Bru's tampering had something to do with her being sick. During police questioning, Bru admitted to licking Rowe's dining ware and doing some other things, but claimed that not everything she wrote in a Facebook post was true. The University of Hartford expelled her, and she was charged with breach of peace and criminal mischief. In what many saw as a slap on the wrist, the judge approved Bru for 2 years of accelerated probation, which would see the charges dropped completely as long as she complied with certain rules set forth by the court. She was ordered to perform 200 hours of community service, to stay out of legal trouble for 2 years, and to have zero contact with Rowe. Number 7. Rasinder Aalu. A former officer of the law from London had her life flipped upside down in 2020 when her husband was accused of several illegal activities. 47-year-old Rasinder Aalu was a veteran of the London Metropolitan Police Department who seemed to have her life together in ways that were both admirable and enviable. In addition to being a cop, she boasted on social media that she was a fitness instructor and a model who had competed in beauty pageants. From the outside looking in, she seemed to be a successful, law-abiding person who just so happened to be beautiful. Aalu was also happily married and lived in a luxury home in an exclusive North London neighborhood. However, things aren't always as they seem. In 2020, international law enforcement cracked a major encrypted messaging network that was popular among drug traffickers and members of organized crime. As detectives began monitoring the platform, they discovered evidence of Rasvinder's husband, Julian Aalu, possibly being involved in criminal activity. He allegedly sent his associates message about his wife being a cop, and in at least one instance, someone asked him to try getting inside information from her. During a raid of the couple's home, Julian denied using the encrypted platform. Investigators found a large amount of cocaine in brick form, tens of thousands of dollars of cash, drug paraphernalia, a large number of cannabis plants, and what appeared to be documented records of drug deals. Julian Aalu was charged with 2 counts of conspiracy to distribute drugs, possession with the intent to supply, and possession of criminal property. He continues to maintain his innocence to this day, and the case is ongoing. Authorities declined to charge Rasinder in connection to the crimes, but she lost her job as a police officer shortly after the raid, and her life seems a lot less desirable now. Number 6. Premeditated murder. On New Year's Eve in 2019, 18-year-old Shaylin Moran met her online boyfriend, Jack Doherty, face-to-face for the first time. He traveled from New York to see her in Rhode Island and proposed to her that night at a party. The next day, Doherty went to a house in Pawtucket and shot 54-year-old Cheryl Smith 4 times when she answered the door. She later died from her injuries. Doherty took a taxi back to the hotel where he and Moran were staying, and they posted a photo together on Facebook with the caption, "We some fighters and some shooters." The post caught the attention of law enforcement while they were still at the murder scene, and police arrested a couple later that evening. During their investigation of the case, they discovered through phone records and other evidence that Moran and Doherty had planned the murder out ahead of time. Their goal was to get revenge against Moran's ex-boyfriend, Leonard Truefield III, and the plan was for Doherty to shoot whoever answered the door at the man's home. The victim was Trufield's mother. Needless to say, the couple's engagement was short-lived. Moran was convicted of first-degree murder in 2021 and received a life sentence plus an additional 10 years. A jury found Doherty guilty in late 2022, rejecting his argument that he should be found not guilty by reason of insanity. He has yet to be sentenced, but it's likely that he won't see freedom ever again. Number 5. Home intruders. When a dog breeder from Port St. Lucie, Florida, bragged on social media about how much money he made from his business, he didn't expect to be kidnapped by home intruders. But that's what happened in June of 2022 when 3 men came to his house posing as customers who were interested in buying puppies. The suspects robbed the terrified victim and forced him to drive them to various places for nearly 2 days. While chauffeuring his captors around, the abducted breeder spotted a Marion County Sheriff's vehicle driving nearby. In hopes of getting the deputy's attention, he drove erratically in order to get pulled over. It worked, but when the deputy approached the car, the victim was afraid to say out loud that he needed help. Right as he was about to be let off with a verbal warning about his driving, he gave the officer a look of despair and motioned his hand to show that he was in danger. It was finally clear to the deputy that something was seriously wrong, and he intervened and called for backup. Inside the car, the cops found knives, guns, and a large amount of cash. Tasdekiel Sellers, Ben Yavin Radcliffe, and Kasha Via Bragdon were charged with unlicensed carry of a firearm, possession of a controlled substance, providing a false name, kidnapping, assault, home invasion, false imprisonment, and witness tampering. All 3 suspects appeared to be from out of town. They claimed that they were only in Port St. Lucie to hang out with girls, but they got taken to jail instead. Number 4. Fontrell Baines. Better known to his fans as Nuke Bizzle, 31-year-old Memphis rapper Fontrell Antonio Baines caught the attention of federal authorities when he bragged in a music video about getting rich off ill-gotten COVID relief assistance. The song was called EDD, which is a commonly used abbreviation for California's Employment Development Department. During the video, Baines and other rappers held up large amounts of envelopes from the agency and boasted about how they just file a claim while other criminals sell drugs. An investigation found evidence that Baines had fraudulently obtained as much as $1.2 million in unemployment benefits in California, where he was living at the time he allegedly carried out the scam. Baines was accused of applying for unemployment using various identities and addresses that he was connected to, and obtaining nearly 100 pre-loaded debit cards containing funds that were meant for people who were struggling during the pandemic. Investigators claimed that he and several co-conspirators used the cards to withdraw $704,000 in cash from ATMs and treated themselves to lavish purchases. The feds arrested Baines in Las Vegas in late 2020. In 2022, he reached a deal with prosecutors and pleaded guilty to one count of mail fraud and for being a convicted felon in possession of a weapon and ammunition. He now faces more than 20 years behind bars, but his case is still ongoing. Number 3. Amber Rose Barnes. In 2022, Amber Rose Barnes, a social media user from Montana, posted a photo of herself posing with a dead animal, along with a caption about how she smoked a wolf pup during a solo predator hunt. People immediately noticed that the creature was actually a domestic husky dog and were quick to blast her in the comments. Authorities soon confirmed that the animal was in fact a dog and not a wolf. It's not unheard of, but it's exceedingly rare for a wolf hunter to mistakenly shoot a dog in Montana, according to Greg Lemon, who works for the state's Fish, Wildlife and Parks Agency. He explained in a national public radio interview that most hunters realize they're tracking the wrong animal before they would have pulled the trigger. The dog Barnes shot was one of at least a dozen domestic canines who were abandoned in the Flathead National Forest shortly before the incident. The most recent update explained law enforcement was still investigating to find out who deserted the dogs. Barnes was charged with misdemeanor animal cruelty and was ordered to appear in court at a later date. She admitted to mistaking the pup as a wolf, but spoke out against the widespread outrage resulting from the mix-up, claiming that she shot the animal in self-defense. In a social media post, she wrote that the dog was growling, howling, and coming at her like it wanted to take a bite out of her, and said that she would have shot it even if she'd known it was a husky, due to its aggressive behavior. It's safe to assume that she'll pay a bigger price in the form of online ridicule than any punishment she received from the court. Number 2. Aubry Carnegie. A Canadian man named Aubry Carnegie gained a TikTok following of over 40,000 fans in 2021 with his videos promoting and discussing the hacktivist collective Anonymous that were openly against the war in Ukraine. However, this wasn't the first time he gained online attention. More than a decade before he appeared on TikTok, Carnegie helped draw widespread attention to Anonymous, which is receiving renewed interest amid the ongoing war. In his videos under the username @Curtainer, Carnegie bragged about his own hacking activities. The self-described famous cyber terrorist took credit for several major breaches and information leaks, including the hacking of the Christian crowdfunding site Give, Send, Go. And while some doubt Carnegie's claims of being a high-level hacker, it was likely no surprise to his followers when he posted a video in 2022 saying that Canadian authorities had raided his Toronto apartment. He told his fans that the Ontario police informed him the FBI was involved. Cyberscoop reached out to American and Canadian law enforcement, but neither would comment or confirm whether there was an ongoing investigation into Carnegie. A few days after the raid, he was evicted from his apartment for unrelated reasons. This left him broke, homeless, and without his computer equipment, which had been seized. Carnegie told his followers that he was living out of his car. He hasn't posted any new TikTok videos in several months, leaving his current legal and living situations a mystery. Number 1. Kayla Arizer. 19-year-old Kayla Arizer was riding as a passenger in her friend's car when police pulled the vehicle over in Moses Lake, Washington in 2018. Officers had no reason to detain her, so they allowed her to leave the scene. During a subsequent search of the car, they found the young woman's purse with heroin, a handgun, and paperwork from her most recent release from jail. As a convicted felon, Arizer wasn't allowed to have a firearm. The police department asked for the public's help locating her so they could take her into custody on drug and gun-related charges. In a snarky comment on the post, Arizer wrote, "Here's a hint of where I'm at, not in jail." Law enforcement got the last laugh when they used covert investigative techniques to lure the suspect into a face-to-face meeting. She wasn't expecting to encounter the cops, and when she realized she'd been fooled, she tried to run. According to an update the department posted on Facebook, Arizer only made it about 4 steps before officers took her into custody. At the moment, the outcome of the case is unclear.
Amber Young. In March of 2018, police pulled a woman over in Marana, Arizona on suspicion of driving under the influence. To their surprise, they found a woman in a white dress behind the wheel. Infamously dubbed the DUI bride, Amber Young allegedly told the officers that she was on her way to her wedding and that she was worried about missing it. When questioned by authorities, she claimed she was completely sober. However, a witness told police they saw Young swerving in and out of traffic before hitting a median. She also performed poorly on several field sobriety tests. The officers arrested her and took her down to the station, at which point she reportedly admitted to drinking some champagne that day. Her blood alcohol level was twice the legal limit. Not long after the arrest, Young's lawyer tweeted that the arrest and photo were a hoax. Her attorneys claimed that their client never said she was getting married and that the police made it up. They argued that Young wasn't engaged, she wasn't wearing a wedding dress, and that she was on her way to have lunch with a friend. But police body cam footage told a different story. Video of the viral arrest showed Young repeatedly mentioning that it was her wedding day, claiming that she was nervous about the upcoming ceremony, and saying she was worried about being late. In the end, Young pleaded guilty to DUI and criminal damage. 9. Danya Glenny. While attending a wedding reception in Longwood, Florida in early 2022, a guest began feeling weird after having some food and wine. It concerned him enough to call the local sheriff's department. When deputies arrived, he said he felt like he had drugs in his system. By then, several other wedding guests were reportedly getting sick, complaining of stomach pain, and they called for paramedics. One man said he was feeling ill and high, and said he wanted to press charges against whoever laced his food. Another guest claimed that the food was laced with marijuana. Up to 50 people felt sick, and several were taken to the hospital. When deputies asked the bride, 42-year-old Danya Glenny, if she had asked the caterer to lace the food with cannabis, or if she had consented to it, she allegedly responded with a long, blank stare before replying, no. Her new husband seemed genuinely surprised by the idea that the food might be laced, and said that he was not responsible for it. He further explained that he thought maybe some guests had brought their own edibles. During their efforts to locate the catering staff from Joyceland's Southern Kitchen, the responding deputies learned that they had already left. In body cam footage that was released to the public, they can be heard telling ailing guests not to drive and instructing catering staff not to throw anything away. Arrest warrants stated that one guest asked Jocelyn Bryant, who owns the catering company, if there was any marijuana in the food, and that she giggled in response. However, the guest apparently didn't take her seriously and helped herself to some food. After she began to feel strange, she asked Glenny if the olive oil contained marijuana, to which the bride allegedly shook her head yes and acted excited. Authorities charged Glenny and Bryant, the owner of the catering company, with tampering, negligence, and delivery of marijuana. 8. Claire Goodbrand. A Scottish couple's wedding turned out to be memorable for all the wrong reasons, when a mass brawl broke out during the reception in 2019. While celebrating their vows with family and friends in West Lothian, Scotland, the newlywed bride, Claire Goodbrand, attacked her mother, Sherry Ann Lindsay, with her stiletto. She also allegedly grabbed Lindsay by the hair and put her in a chokehold, causing the victim to fear for her life. Claire's husband, Eamon, and his brother/best man joined in on the huge fight, which started after a day of heavy drinking. Lindsay's partner, David Boyd, was left severely injured. Police arrested the Goodbrands and their best man, who all spent the night in separate jail cells. They ultimately pleaded guilty to assault. 3 years after the attack, Lindsay told the Scottish Sun that she evicted Claire and Eamon from a property she owns shortly after the wedding. She also completely disinherited Claire, ensuring that her daughter won't receive any of her assets or money. She accused Claire and Eamon of only caring about money and decided to cut them out of the will despite Claire being an only child. Neighbors and other sources told reporters that the Goodbrands are no longer living together and that they have separate addresses in Glasgow, but they're often seen visiting each other, leaving the nature of their current relationship a mystery. 7. Jessica Vega. A Montgomery, New York man named Michael O'Connell received devastating news in 2010 when his girlfriend, Jessica Vega, told him that she was suffering from a rare form of leukemia and had just 6 months left to live. The story began to circulate and was featured in the news, and the couple received over $13,000 in donations from friends and well-wishers for their wedding and honeymoon. A few months after the couple exchanged their vows, O'Connell began to suspect that his wife didn't really have cancer. His instinct proved correct. O'Connell reported Vega to the police and divorced her, and she was arrested on numerous charges relating to the deception. News headlines accused Vega of scamming people in order to pay for her dream wedding, but she claimed that it was a last-ditch effort to save her failing relationship. In a 2020 interview, Vega said that O'Connell had moved out of their shared home before she told him about their alleged cancer diagnosis. She claimed that if she didn't somehow get his attention, she would be doomed to be a single mom. She pleaded guilty to scheming to defraud and possession of a forged instrument, and was sentenced to time served after spending several months in jail awaiting the conclusion of the case. Vega repaid all her donors with the help from her father, although she admitted that she knew it wouldn't necessarily buy their forgiveness. Her lawyer, Jeremy Flaherty, told CBS News that the fake cancer scheme wasn't pre-planned, but that it was like a snowball going downhill. In a surprising twist, Vega and O'Connell reconciled and moved back in together while the case was still being dealt with in court. However, their relationship ended once again. When Vega was arrested in San Antonio for an alleged kidnapping in 2022, O'Connell called local news station KSAT to make sure they knew about her past. 6. Kate Elizabeth Pritchard. Just hours after their wedding in 2017, 25-year-old Kate Elizabeth Pritchard and her husband, James Burton, got into an argument at the Clarion Inn Motel in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. During the heated disagreement, Pritchard allegedly pointed a 9mm pistol at Burton's head and pulled the trigger. Luckily, no shots were fired and nobody was injured. She then loaded a round into the gun's chamber and fired a shot into the air. The newlywed bride was still in her wedding dress when police arrived at the scene. They responded to a call about a woman threatening to shoot her husband after he pushed her against a wall. Both the bride and groom were uncooperative with officers and denied that anything was wrong. Witnesses, on the other hand, reported seeing the couple drinking and arguing outside their room. Police took Pritchard into custody on an aggravated domestic assault charge and informed Burton that their honeymoon was over and his new wife was going to jail. At the time of the arrest, it was unclear whether Pritchard knew that there was no bullet in the gun when she shot it the first time. The case was dropped the following year. 5. Stephanie Genus. While responding to a domestic disturbance call at a Hilton hotel in Naples, Florida in 2022, police encountered a crying bride with blood on her wedding dress and a torn strap. Her mother told officers that her newlywed daughter, 32-year-old Stephanie Genus, had gotten into some sort of altercation with her husband, 43-year-old John Gerhard. By then, Gerhard had left the property in his vehicle. Genus allegedly told the authorities that she started the fight, but wound up having to physically defend herself when it turned into a wrestling match. According to a police report, she suffered from bruises, a bloody nose, a busted lip, and a swollen eye. She was evaluated by paramedics, but declined further medical treatment. While officers were interviewing Genus, her husband called his new father-in-law and told him that Genus headbutted him and broke his nose. The police report noted that Gerhard eventually returned to the hotel and took responsibility for causing his wife's injuries. He also declined medical attention. Inside the hotel room, police found a bloody dress shirt and washcloth, along with fresh bloodstains on the carpet, linens, bathroom floor, and desk. Gerhard and Genus were both charged with domestic battery and booked into the Collier County Jail. However, they were released the next day on a $1,000 bond. 4. Runaway jewel thief. A man who wanted to get married in India was robbed by his bride after paying around $850 to have his nuptials arranged in 2022. In a complaint filed at the Bilhour police station in the country's Kanpur district, the victim, known only as Arvind, said that he hired the matchmaking services of two men who set him up with a bride named Ruchi. After forking over the payment, he was shown a photo of the woman, and they exchanged vows the next day. Ruchi moved into Arvind's home, but she wasn't there long. Just a few days after she arrived, Arvind woke up to find her gone, along with jewelry, clothing that was gifted to her at the wedding, and around $365 in cash that he kept in a box. He then received a phone call from his bride, who reportedly told him that she doesn't love him and not to call her again. According to the most recent update, police were still investigating the situation. It isn't the first time something like this has happened in India. In 2021, a groom in Uttar Pradesh who was struggling to find a bride sought help from two men who claimed to know a marriageable woman. His family paid to have the wedding arranged and were shocked when the bride and the two men vanished shortly after the wedding with stolen cash and jewelry. 3. Ashley Jordan. One newlywed couple apparently partied a little too hard while celebrating their vows along Prescott, Arizona's Whiskey Row Street in 2019. The chaos started when someone called the police and reported that a woman in a wedding dress was trying to assault an employee at one of the historic district's many saloons. While officers confronted 30-year-old Ashley Jordan, her husband, 32-year-old Eric Cordova, allegedly became aggressive toward law enforcement. A deputy tried to restrain him, but he resisted, and the policeman fell to the ground. Several other members of the wedding party reportedly joined the brawl, and Jordan was later accused of striking an officer with her open palm. Two officers sustained minor injuries during the altercation. Jordan and Cordova were charged with aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer, resisting arrest, and disorderly conduct. 3 others were also arrested in connection with the case, with one partygoer being accused of aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer, while the 2 others were cited for disorderly conduct. 2. Lockdown wedding. During the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic, South Africa imposed some of the world's strictest lockdown measures. However, the new rules didn't stop one couple from going forward with their wedding during the second week of lockdown in 2020, despite a nationwide ban on public gatherings. Police received a tip about the unnamed pair ignoring the coronavirus regulations and arrested them at their wedding in KwaZulu-Natal. Authorities didn't stop there. They also apprehended 50 of their guests and the pastor who was conducting the ceremony. A viral video shows the groom helping his new bride into the back of a police vehicle. It seemed as though authorities were more than happy to let the incident act as an example of what might happen to anyone else who got caught breaking lockdown rules. Officials in the city of Umlathus, where the couple was arrested, announced that the newlyweds would be spending their honeymoon under stringent bail conditions. 1. Tammy Hinton. 53-year-old Tammy Hinton was still in her wedding dress and had just exchanged vows with her new husband at a church in Jackson, Ohio, when police picked her up on a 3-year-old felony warrant in 2011. Law enforcement believed she had moved to Florida, and when they heard that she would be in town for her wedding, they decided to seize the opportunity to take her into custody. Officers had reportedly discussed whether to serve the warrant on Tammy's wedding day, but it was the only reliable information they had on her upcoming whereabouts. Public Safety Officer Rick Gillespie told NBC 24, "We can't ignore it when we have good information on where she's going to be. We had to do what we had to do." According to Gillespie, they were nice enough to let her pose for photos with her wedding party before taking her in. He said that Tammy was shocked and initially had no idea what was going on. She spent about a half hour in jail before being released on bond and was picked up by her husband, marking a less than romantic beginning to their marriage.
9. Patricia Crenel. Patricia Crenel first made news headlines in 2012 after she was charged with child endangerment for allegedly taking her 5-year-old daughter into a tanning bed with her. The suburban New Jersey mum spent a week in jail before regaining her freedom. By the time she was released, internet users around the world had made up their mind about what kind of person she was, even though she maintained her innocence. It was clear, based on photos of Crenel that surfaced after her arrest, that she likes to tan, perhaps a little too much. In most of the images, she sported an unnatural orange complexion and leathery skin. People naturally assumed that she was obsessed, and it was easy for many to believe that she was passing on her tanorexia to her impressionable young daughter. Crenel defended her enjoyment of tanning, saying that it just feels good. But she was banned from numerous local salons who wanted no involvement in her high-profile case, and in addition to being hated online, she was frequently harassed by members of her community while out in public. The judgment against her persisted, even after a grand jury decided not to indict her and authorities let her keep custody of her kids. In 2022, just months after losing her husband to COVID-19 and other health issues, the vilified mother of 5 told Insider that she was a completely different person than she was 10 years earlier. Crenel said that she no longer tanned to an extreme, and that she never meant to take it as far as she did in the past. She also expressed relief that she never got skin cancer from the dangerous habit. 8. Controversial Canadian teacher. The ordinarily uneventful town of Oakville, Ontario, found itself at the center of a shocking controversy in 2022, when some concerned parents accused a local high school teacher of taking their gender transformation too far. The industrial arts teacher was assigned male at birth, but decided in 2021 to start openly identifying as a woman, something that many people and the law agreed that she should be allowed to do. But photos captured by students led some to feel that the educator was crossing a line. The images revealed that she was wearing extremely massive fake breasts that hung down to their waist. In one video, the teacher could be seen maneuvering around her ample bosom to operate a circular saw during a class demonstration. Certain features of her chest, which are ordinarily considered inappropriate for children to see, were visible through her clothing. Locals expressed their concern to the school board, which responded by saying that it supported the teacher's right to express her gender as she wishes. Additionally, the board said that it was working to create a safety plan to protect her and ensure her ability to continue teaching. The teacher had no previous issues with the school board and was reportedly very well liked by students. But some said that they felt uncomfortable with her unnaturally large prosthetic bust, which has led to allegations that the teacher's appearance is inappropriate in ways that have nothing to do directly with her gender identity. Employment lawyer Sanira Chowdhury told the Toronto Sun that she believes the school board can and should impose limits on her chosen form of expression. She even went as far as saying that the enlarged chest seems sexist due to its exaggerated nature, which could make young women feel mocked or embarrassed. Chowdhury further explained that a restriction on the teacher's attire would be similar to a boss telling a biological female that they have to wear a bra to work and keep certain parts of their body covered up, which falls within most employers' ability to enforce grooming standards on some level. The scandal has gone quiet since it first broke, and it's unclear whether the school board changed its stance on the matter or if it continues to unconditionally support the teacher's controversial look. 7. Henry Rodriguez. Many of us have a favorite superhero, but most people don't actually try to become their favorite superhero. There are a few exceptions, however. One of them is a 43-year-old Venezuelan father and tattoo artist named Henry Rodriguez, who's made extreme and permanent changes to his appearance in an effort to resemble the Marvel supervillain Red Skull from the Captain America comics. He started his journey in 2012 and has reached deep into his pockets to accomplish his goal. In early 2022, Rodriguez told the Daily Star that he spent tens of thousands of dollars on various procedures, including having parts of his nose and ears chopped off, splitting his tongue, having the whites of his eyes tattooed black, and having horns implanted into his head. His face is also tattooed to look like Red Skull, who first appeared in 1947 as a Nazi arch-enemy of Captain America. Rodriguez insists that he has a lot of things in common with the character, but that he doesn't share Red Skull's Nazi beliefs. And while his radical transformation may seem crazy, he was required to undergo psychological assessments before he was allowed to undergo the modifications. He said that he has no plans to stop until he's fully satisfied with his appearance. 6. Natasha Crown. A young woman from Gothenburg, Sweden named Natasha Crown went viral in 2022. When she was filmed going on a blind date on a YouTube show called Hooked on the Look, which follows people with unusual looks and personalities on their journeys to find love. By then, she was already a popular influencer, with over 2 million followers who is well known for her unnaturally oversized backside. Natasha makes a living selling custom content to people with a particular preference for extreme curves. To keep up with her desire for an ever-widening rear end, she's gotten numerous fat transfer procedures done. By 2018, she'd already undergone 3 operations and was planning her 4th. Her ultimate goal is to have the world's biggest bum. And if she's telling the truth about having a 6-foot wide bottom, she can't be too far from achieving it. In addition to getting plastic surgery, Natasha purposely overeats to maintain her unusual figure, which has led her loved ones to worry that her lifestyle will have damaging health effects. After the food makes her gain weight, she has the fat relocated to her hind side. During the dating show, Natasha revealed that she's been single for 7 years because men were intimidated by her looks, and the date she was filmed going on didn't lead to a second date. But she said she had no plans to stop getting butt-enhancing treatments, opting instead to have a body that makes her feel beautiful, rather than make changes for the sake of attracting a companion. 5. Kazy. In one of the most unusual robberies to make headlines in recent decades, a liquor store in Ashland, Kentucky was held up in 2007 by a man who wrapped his head with duct tape as a disguise. Employees were undeterred by the mummy-like getup and tackled the robber to the ground, where they held him until police arrived. News cameras captured footage of paramedics removing the tape from his face. The suspect, who went down in history as the duct tape bandit, was identified as Kazy, and his ridiculous disguise earned him a permanent place in popular memory as one of the country's dumbest criminals. He initially proclaimed his innocence, claiming that he wasn't the duct tape-covered man who committed the crime, but he pleaded guilty to the robbery and received a 10-year sentence. Kazy was out on parole in 2014 when he committed another robbery, this time with a co-conspirator. He didn't make any news headlines for how he looked during the crime, suggesting that he decided to forego the duct tape. The court sentenced him to 12 years in prison, with a requirement to serve at least 85% of his time before becoming eligible for parole. 4. Samy Halford. In early 2022, 27-year-old Samy Halford came forward as the proud wearer of Britain's biggest eyebrows. The single mother of 2 from Grimsby claimed that people bullied her both online and in person for her thick, rectangular, drawn-on brows. Some even threatened to report her to social services, citing her eyebrows as evidence that she's a bad parent. But Halford defended her appearance, telling the Daily Star that her eyebrows don't define whether or not she's a good mum. She explained that she started drawing them on with liquid eyeliner because she wanted to deviate from modern beauty norms. Halford also stood by her token phrase, "The bigger the brow, the bigger the boy," as a nod to the type of men she was attracting with her new look. After some persuading from her friends, she joined TikTok and quickly garnered thousands of followers, including many men who told her that they think she's very beautiful and would be willing to date her. A few months after Halford's story broke, she introduced the world to her boyfriend Bailey Pike, who rocks similarly exaggerated brows as well as a pair of drawn-on eyeglasses. In one post, she wrote about how happy she was with a man she only thought existed in fairy tales, and it's certainly true that they seem meant for each other. 3. James Goldwell. One morning in 2007, a man walked into a bank in Manchester, New Hampshire, with fake branches and leaves taped to his body. He approached the counter, demanded cash, and left moments later with an undisclosed amount of money in his possession. It was a quick robbery with no weapons involved, and nobody was injured. Officers responded to the scene with a canine unit but failed to track down the suspect. But if he was hoping that dressing up as a tree would conceal his identity, he set himself up for disappointment. Police released surveillance footage captured during the robbery and appealed to the public for information leading to the thief's identity. Someone recognized him and called in the tip, and he was in custody by the end of the day. 49-year-old James Goldwell was charged with robbery. Although he was accused of committing a serious crime, even the police couldn't resist making a joke about his undeniably hilarious disguise, with Sergeant Ernie Goodnose saying he really went out on a limb. The outcome of the case is unclear. 2. Herbert Chavez. You might have heard of Valeria Lukyanova and Justin Jedlicka, better known as the real-life Barbie and human Ken for their obsession with looking like the Mattel dolls. But they're old news compared to Herbert Chavez, who underwent nearly 24 surgeries over an 18-year period to mimic the appearance of Superman/Clark Kent. Chavez, who hails from Calamba City in the Philippines, told the press that he fell in love with the Superman series at age 5. He was 37 years old when he first broke widespread news headlines for his strange obsession in 2015. By then, he'd already received fillers on numerous occasions and had undergone nose jobs, skin whitening procedures, liposuction, and jaw realignment. He spent thousands of dollars on his appearance, which may not sound like much, but it's a considerable amount of money in a country with an average salary of less than $13,000. Chavez wanted to take his efforts a step further and get Superman's abs of steel surgically implanted in his body. But after discovering that he was using dangerous fillers, the plastic surgeons he consulted refused to perform the procedure. The substance, known as mesolipo, is illegal in the United States and left the man's body covered in unsightly bumps and spots. Its presence in his body made surgery highly risky, forcing doctors to turn down his request for surgery on ethical grounds. After saying no to Chavez, the doctors offered him some advice on how to achieve his desired look, the old-fashioned way, by eating right and exercising. 1. Maria Jose Cristina Mendez. If it weren't for her extreme body modifications, Maria Jose Cristina Mendez would seem like an ordinary working mother. But she wears many hats, including as a lawyer, a tattoo artist, a businesswoman, and a self-proclaimed vampire, with 96% of her body covered in tattoos. She also has multiple piercings, large spaces in her ears, a split tongue, subdermal implants in her head, eye tattoos, dental implants that resemble fangs, and purposefully inflicted scars. Her life started out much differently. Cristina originally comes from Guadalajara, Mexico, and had a deeply religious upbringing. She attended a Catholic school and got married at 17 in a traditional wedding. Her husband allegedly abused her and then abandoned her, leaving her to care for their 4 kids on her own. The end of their marriage marked a turning point for Cristina, who started modifying her body as a way to express both her story and her strength. For her, the changes she made represent courage and liberation. She's made numerous TV appearances, including in the National Geographic series Taboo Latin America, and there's a statue of her in the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum. The Guinness Book of World Records recognizes her as the world's most tattooed woman. In addition to being famous for her shocking appearance, Cristina has her own clothing line and tattoo studio, where she helps others tell their stories through their physical transformations. Thanks for watching. If you had to choose between dares, would you rather shave your eyebrows off or draw a design on your forehead with permanent marker that takes 3 weeks to fully wash off? Let us know in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.